So you've had a second to kind of collect yourself. Tell it to me again. You guys were playing last night, drinking a bottle of wine.
Putting puzzles together, doing artwork.
Doing puzzles, artwork.
Okay. Had a bottle of wine and then decided to play hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
So
What time was that? Do you remember?
I mean, I know that I was in bed probably by like what, 12:30.
Okay.
Well, I went upstairs at least, and I fell asleep.
Okay.
Forgetting that he was in the
suitcase.
suitcase.
You guys were playing the hide and go seek.
Yes.
And at some point you put him in the suitcase?
No, he got in the suitcase. So he thought it would be funny to be put in the suitcase. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to joke with you and I'll zip you up and make him, squirm a little bit, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But then I fell asleep. Mm-hmm. I fell asleep.
Where was the suitcase?
Right where it is.
In it. Right down there?
Yes.
You zipped him in there?
Yes.
Thought he would be funny, a little joke.
It was. We both were laughing about it. Okay. And then I fell asleep.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
All right, here we go. How is everybody? Wow, did we have a time watching Sarah Boone's sentencing yesterday? It was a lot longer than I thought. And it was horrific. And it's what I consider Sarah Boone's second heinous act. There are no second act in American lives. Not so, says Sarah Boone. Or her second criminal act. I mean, it really should be criminal what she did yesterday. Made herself the victim, re-victimized the victim's family. And it was done in such a callous, egotistical way. You'd expect nothing less from Sarah Boone. But after hearing Jorge Torres's family, it was shocking that she did this in front of them. Actually called them out and said that she forgives them. They need forgiving, not her. After they were particularly soft on her too. So we're going to start out looking at and one of the more shocking things. I've been to so many sentencing hearings. So I went to almost every sentencing hearing in the NXIVM case. I believe so. I may have missed Kathy Russell. No, I was at Kathy. Was that her plea deal? No, pretty much. I've been to a lot of sentencing hearings. The main feeling from the audience yesterday as Sarah Boone was droning on and on with her really heinous speech, stomach-turning speech, was, can she do this? Can the judge stop her? And I will say that at Claire Bronfman, the Seagram's heiress, who was involved in the NXIVM cult led by Keith Raniere, at her sentencing hearing, Judge Garifas did stop her. She was addressing a comment to one of the women that she victimized, and Judge Garifas stopped her. She started to use this kind of technique, this neuro-linguistic program technique that they use in NXIVM on her victim, and Judge Garifas stopped her and said, when you said that, your victim recoiled. He's like, this judge isn't blind. You cannot do this in this courtroom. Like, put the foot down. It was a goosebump moment. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. But shut her down completely. So it can be done by a judge. No one was stopping Sarah Boone yesterday, but it started out hearing from Jorge Torres' mother. That's where we're going to start. Then we're going to go into Sarah Boone's own statement, but we're going to start with the family statement because this is a victim-centered podcast. And of course, they're the most important. So we start with them. His daughter and mother, I believe. So let's take a look.
Ma'am, good afternoon. Could you state and spell your name for the record for us?
My name is Torres.
Okay. Ma'am, you can go ahead.
I just want to tell Sarah Boone that I don't hate her for what she did. And I always remember that evening when that lady came into my door and she knocked at the door. And she asked for my name. I said, I tell her my name. And then she said, can I come in? I said, okay, yes. And she told me to sit down. I never think that was going to be my son. And then she said my son was dead. Since that day, I can't sleep. It's hard for me to remember that moment. My son is not here no more. She don't only kill my son, she killed a father, a brother, an uncle. It's been hard. And my family, because all the brothers, they will always work together. But now it's like something real. Love is missing. Sometimes when I look out the window, I'm waiting for him to come and say, Mom, I love you. She was always there. She called me. I missed us, Mommy. The last time that I talked to him was at 12 o'clock in January, New Year. He came to my bed and said, Mom. He woke me up and I said, Mom, I love you. Happy New Year. Since that day, I don't see him no more. It was my son. I love him. And I miss him a lot, and my family miss him a lot too. But I don't hurt her. But you know what? I was blessed. She ain't gonna be blessed like me because I have my son. I raised him. I have his children, my granddaughter, my grandson, and she don't gonna be able to have that. And I did. I raised him. He wasn't perfect, but he was a good son. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. State anything further from this?
I mean, you just see her, the power in that, just in her sobs, you know. This is why victims' voices they've tried to actually keep, there's been discussion about overturning Payne versus Tennessee that gives victims' families a voice and victims a voice in these sentencing hearings for exactly this reason. Their voices are so powerful. And you could just, you know, you can sometimes when a judge hears something said from a victim, they will reconsider their sentence give a heftier sentence. Certainly Claire Bronfman got 3 times the recommended sentence. She took a plea deal. I think 3.5 times, but she got out early thanks to Trump's First Step Act, I think it's called. So which gives federal prisoners an easy way to parole after they do a tiny fraction of their sentence, which I don't know. I really do. I'm not really behind these blanket laws because sentences are so individually considered. That just puts a blanket, okay, after this amount of time, you get an option to parole. And our parole boards only really get a fraction of the evidence to look over. And they cannot look over all the evidence and have the same view that the trial judge does. So, anyway, she's out early, but she was given 7.5 years. But she's saying to Sarah, you're never going to raise your child like I did. Sarah Boone does have a son who didn't speak. No one spoke for Sarah who was related to Sarah. It was all her fellow inmates sent letters. Her former friend in jail came in person. And then, which I've never seen before at a sentencing hearing, her groupie, essentially, who's been in touch with her for 11 months and says she's a true crime fan, called in. We're going to listen to that. But I mean, I've never seen anything like that. As my mother says, who volunteers in jail, she says there's a saying in jail that they're all so well behaved here. They all seem so nice in here in this very regulated, regimented environment. So here's his daughter.
No, Your Honor. Defense?
No, sir.
Thank you.
But what a trial to have to come to this and have to speak, to speak and air your pain in front of everyone, and then only to have Sarah Boone. I mean, they were very gentle on Sarah Boone, or George's mother was certainly gentle on Sarah Boone. And wait till you hear what she has to say.
I do.
Ma'am, could you state and spell your name for the record for us, please?
Victoria Torres. My name is Victoria Torres. George is my brother. Unfortunately,
I'm sorry. Apologies. This is his sister. I believe his child speaks via Zoom.
Family has experienced 2 horrifying tragedies. And I just want to make it clear that George deserves justice. As far as my other brother and Sarah deserve to rot in jail. Sarah has caused a lifetime of pain.
So her other brother is facing a similar charge. And Sarah Boone will talk about that in her statement. So it's interesting here. It seems like George's sister anticipated that Sarah would bring that up. And was like, yes, as for my other brother, he deserves to rot in prison with Sarah. Interesting.
A lifetime of horrible images. A lifetime of hearing my brother George plead for his life. This is just this moment for all of you. For me and my family, it's forever. Such a simple thing as using a suitcase is so triggering. I try not to close it all the way. I leave at least like 2 or 3 inches for the zipper. And it might sound crazy, but it just helps me. She really has flipped my family's life upside down. And I just hope that we can truly get justice for my brother. And I just want to tell the team thank you so much for everything they did. Thank you.
Thank you. State anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Defense?
No.
Thank you.
All right. And she's right. It is forever. You know, when they say the family can have closure, there is no closure. These wounds don't heal. It's just a matter of degrees of grief. So I'm going to save the groupie statement for the end, for comic relief at the end, because it's so absurd. But let's get into your comments from yesterday, and then we'll get into Sarah Boone's ridiculous, re-victimizing statement.
We got your comments. You had something to say. You were insightful. Oh, so clever. So Roberta's going to read your comments. Hey, Roberta, read those comments.
So the first comment has to do with something Sarah says about, starts off talking about a kind of Japanese technique of repairing pottery. The cracked pottery was, this is from Cindy B 6668. The cracked pottery was a scripture verse in Jeremiah. Sarah got it a bit wrong, trying to blend it with a Japanese pot. In the scripture, God talks about the pot having a fault, referring to humanity's condition. Basically, we're all crackpots to some degree. And then the pot is repaired by the master craftsman, God. Usually potters discard a pot if it's flawed, but a master craftsman can, quote, make it into another, unquote. Clearly a different analogy. It's not a fixer-upper that she needs, but a complete change of heart. Interesting. SH236 says, how does anyone listen to George's mother and then go on the stand to forgive, quote unquote, the victim's family? Excellent point. Along with everyone else in the world who ever did anything to her. So she says she forgives all these people as a way to re-air her grievances, as you'll hear. Even for Sarah, it was off the charts, almost an artistic level of narcissism, especially for the horror show of what she did. Agree. Deanne Webster, 6030, says, well, according to her, she went through all of these things and stayed with them, but went through the horror of 8 attorneys and set them free. Great point. Can't argue with that logic. She's going to reject 8 attorneys, but she can't leave George. And it just showed a pattern of coercive control on her part and power and control. And she basically held the entire courtroom hostage. In her speech, let's take a look at it. Here's the worst. I mean, they're all horrible. You always hold your breath at these sentencing hearings. when the accused is going to, or the convicted is going to speak, because they're all awful. Seldom do they take any responsibility. And when they do, the feeling is only paper thin. But here, this was officially the worst statement to the court of the sentencing hearing I've ever heard. I mean, I don't know. It's up on par with Keith Raniere's, where he called all the victims liars. I mean, that was pretty awful. It's on par with that, at least.
For the record, just state your name again.
Sarah Boone.
All right. Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some notes or written a letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that?
Yes.
All right. Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of...
Hold on a second.
Guys, we didn't get to hear the unedited version. I guess her bunkies and her friends in jail got to hear the unedited version. But her lawyer was like, probably, this is the things her lawyer let her keep in. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper. And I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, I have, this is
all the things that I'm left to say in my trial, because there's no evidence of this actually happening. So I'm just going to say it happened, because I don't have to have evidence here. I can just say it happened, and you're going to have to believe me. So this is, of course, all his bad treatment of Sarah that we're going to hear about, that we strangely didn't hear about in trial, when she's facing second-degree charges. Come on. I mean, come on. That should tell you right there.
It's just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then, if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kintu Sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style, which means to repair with gold.
Okay, the judge is like, why the wind-up? Why the long introduction? Is this Frank Sinatra's comeback? Are you Howard Cosell? Why this long introduction? Get to it, lady. Okay, so we heard this kind of Japanese repairing pottery technique. Okay, my apologies. I'll let it play from now on.
In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious, and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu Sukuroi. In my wisdom, and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by Jorge Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree forced into being pro se.
So these are all the wrongs. So she's got some innocence fraud narratives here. Scoundrel detectives. So what are they saying, that those scoundrel detectives got the wrong person, that someone else did this? She's saying it was a tunnel vision investigation. And it was the media, trial by media. There's another innocence fraud narrative. Trial by media, tunnel vision investigation. I could never have a fair trial. Anybody? Charlie Adelson, anyone? Donna Adelson, anyone? Couldn't have a fair trial because the entire media was so against me. I almost had to go pro se. She got a better lawyer than she deserved after her treatment. Instead of being thankful, the lawyer came to her rescue at the 9th hour. She was treated terribly. And by the family. She throws the family under the bus. How dare she? How dare she?
Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter. As the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with Jorge Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on.
Yeah, Legion says, I think she's a masochist. So was Keith Raniere. And he did the same kind of speech. I think you're right there, Legion. Enjoyed the beatdowns and the drama. Yeah, I think you're right.
Stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together.
He ruined her family's traditions. How do you do that? How do you ruin family traditions? Either you keep the family traditions. You can't. He ruined a family tradition, so he spoiled it while you were practicing it. He spoiled it. It's like it can't go on anymore. These traditions can't go on because he spoiled it. My practice of it a couple times. Is that what she's saying? She lost me there. But keepsakes. But when she says he, whatever, senseless, I think that what she said is, she'll say another time she saw stars. He hurt her so much she saw stars. So it's always in this very, like in the cartoons. So it's like an idea of what she felt or experienced. Like she's seen it in cartoons, so that's what she experienced. And she'll just use a common phrase. I mean, there's no real experiential memory here, is what I'm saying. It's like things that she's picked up, adages, things she's seen watching TV.
For wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over. For breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me on his bed. For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape their remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me. For threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother. For all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped. For drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me...
Right. So he made her drink. But when you watch the trial, it was her actions. She was the person who was in charge of the schedule, who made sure every action that they got to the liquor store to get their liquor, but when she urinated on herself, it was his fault somehow. It's like the narcissist. It's really like a exaggeration of narcissism, isn't it? Isn't it like a cartoonish narcissism? It's hard to believe.
2 black eyes and a bloody nose. For making me experience what it is to be threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece. For threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job. For holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave. For stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested. For destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called. For me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison. For beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe. For having me experience what it means to see stars, like in the cartoons, where a character has a tall lump on their...
Right. I think we would have saw that occipital lobe. My occipital lobe. I think we heard about the stabbing of the leg, but she gave another reason that they were again, I just don't believe her. For all those saying this was mutual. I don't believe that. There's really, in these kind of relationships, one person has all the power. There really isn't such a thing as mutual. There can be, it can get physical back and forth, but one person in these kind of relationships, coercive control, power and control, things that end like this, one person has all the control. I say it was Sarah. I know other people don't disagree, but I say it's Sarah in this relationship.
I had that too, and many times. For dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him. For taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him. For causing me so much trauma and pain.
Right, he had to go to the meetings, but she had to wait for hours, guys, in the parking lot for him. She couldn't have said, what time does it end? And picked him up. She had to wait hours in the parking lot. And she explained the importance of her car. And still he took it. Can you imagine? This is unreal. Is anyone else getting the unrealness of this? Unreal.
Mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once. For destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love.
Oh my God!
I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives.
Who's waiting for the TV movie Terrifying Love, the Sarah Boone story? I mean, come on. This reminded me a little bit of MTV when they used to have the I'm so old, but does anybody remember when they had the poetry, MTV raps poetry? You yesterday, me, you sat in the car. I forgive you. I explained how important that car was, but you took it from me. Sarah Boone, like something like that. Does it sound like that? She's just getting into it, getting into the rhythm of the words. Nevermore, but I forgive you. Better person am I. Tomorrow, no longer.
Daughters.
Wow! Incredible!
All for knowing who George was capable of and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Averil Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the times Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result.
Never mind that it was the infamy of her case that got her a lawyer. You think that if they pulled the lawyer from her own bad behavior, and this case was unknown, that some lawyer would have rushed to defend her for nothing? But it's people like me who've talked about this case online that are the trouble. We're the scoundrels. But she's gotten even better. She's pure gold, guys. Sarah Boone's pure gold. She's gotten to be pure gold from this experience.
Of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all of the media tycoons for not having a life of their own.
Right, there's the innocence fraud narrative. She couldn't have a fair trial because it was so publicized. Not that she taped the crime scene. It's everyone else's fault. If you don't want a sensational trial, don't do something like this. Don't go beyond the bounds of try not to break the law, and try not to break it in a way that turns everyone's stomach, and then try not to act a fool in court and terrible to your lawyers, court-appointed lawyers. Try that, Sarah Boone. But they were all defective, all 8 of them in some way. She's wonderful, but see, she's even more wonderful for her faults. She's even stronger and better and pure gold from her faults. Amazing.
own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and their keyboards. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed, in my case, still no one knows me. In the end, I forgive myself.
No one knows her except the person we're going to hear from next, which is her groupie. Without the infamy of your case, you'd never have your groupie speaking up for you at your sentencing, Sarah. How about that? This groupie is something. She's a true crime fan, homebound, but Sarah's a more multi-dimensional person, she's found out. Where I wish I could understand it. I wish I could understand these people who write to people in these high profile cases and want to befriend them. I wish I could understand the people asking for Karen Reed's autograph, etc. I just don't get it.
For not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. For being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home, and car. Having 20/20 hindsight thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since.
Right. If you really cared about your blind and deaf dogs that we heard about so often and we'll hear about from her groupie, if you really cared, the minute that they were mistreated, you would be out of there. That person would, if anyone mistreated my cats, I would be, sorry, person non grata. I'd call the police. Forget it. Forget it. I wouldn't be inviting them in my home. The minute they threatened me or my cats, forget it. But forget me. Let's put me out of there. And Sarah out of there. Let's just put the dogs. She cared about her blind and deaf dogs. What is she doing having this guy over? Thank you, Annie Shaw, for the super sticker. I appreciate it.
Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am, endlessly, and that I never stopped loving him. In all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness. But due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry.
Right. I wrote letters saying I felt so sorry, but I just couldn't send them because I was too afraid to send my apology letters. Who believes that? If anybody believes that, I got a bridge to
cannot
sell
begin
you.
To fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him, seeing my stab wound especially every day especially. It truly reminds me that all I really did live through. George haunts me. He is everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he is with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Cranick. To the entire planet, please forgive me. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration, for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profuse and ceaseless. Allow me, please, to brush off the muck, wipe the blood off of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding in what really happened and for how long. For second chances, repentance, and redemption, to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope.
Did you get that, guys? Anybody who judges her is terrible. She's asking for reconciliation and understanding, and all of us who judge her are terrible people. She's a wonderful person. And she's the real victim in this. She's being sent away to prison, guys. I think there's a part of this that got cut out. My apologies, but where she talks about permanence, and that really made me hit the roof yesterday. She talked about how this is just but for a moment. That everybody here is experiencing her sentences for a moment, but for her it's permanent. I was like, no, what you did to George is permanent. Everything else is temporary.
Always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and the inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There is always hope, and you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor.
Right. I'm even better than those people because I survived. I wouldn't be remembered or be a minor celebrity if I had passed on. But I survived. Is she trying to say that George is being remembered because he's male, and if she were in George's place, she wouldn't be forgotten because she's female? Is that what she's saying?
Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
That is it from her. Don't you feel like she should have her fist up at the end of that? This is some Jesse Smollett. Remember when Jesse Smollett walked out of his sentencing with his fist up in the air? And he was innocent, man. He was innocent. I feel it's on that level of offensiveness. Without further ado, here is her, but no sentencing would be complete without her groupie. Sarah Boone's groupie doesn't know how to work the camera on Zoom, which I don't know if I believe that. She's the only one who couldn't figure it out, how to work the camera. The camera only didn't work with her. I wasn't sure if I believed her. And she was absolutely twice as loud. So if you're listening on headphones, you might want to adjust. She's pretty loud. Take a listen.
Your Honor, could we see if Ms. Anna Torres has been able to make it online?
Yeah, it's saying default camera. It's saying front camera. I chose it. It didn't show my face or anything like that.
So nobody knows what to do here. They agreed to just let her be a booming voice in the courtroom.
I have no objection to the witness making their statement here telephonically.
Okay, appreciate it. All right, Miss Albert, good afternoon. If you could just state and spell your name for the record for us, please.
Certainly. Lana, L-A-N-A, Albert, A-L-B-E-R-T.
Okay. All right, Mr. Owens is going to ask you some questions. And if you could just answer them, ma'am, I would greatly appreciate it. Sir, you can proceed.
Miss Albert, do you have the ability to turn your volume down?
Yes, I just did. I can't hear you very well when I do that, though.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you, but very, very quietly.
How about now?
Yes, I can hear you. Am I okay?
Yeah, you sound a lot better. You were too loud earlier.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right, Miss Albert, tell the court a little bit about yourself briefly.
Well, I live in Minnesota. I currently have end-stage renal disease. Before I became disabled, I was a business owner in the Twin Cities here.
All right, and how old are you?
I am 50 years old.
All right, and you're considered disabled?
Yes, I am.
All right. And have you had an occasion since this event to establish a relationship with Sarah Boone?
Yes, I have. We have been friends for the past a little over 11 months.
And how do y'all communicate?
We've communicated a lot of phone calls, lots of tablet back and forth, and a lot of letters as well. I'd say many hours of time spent with each other.
All right. And do you want to speak on her behalf here today?
I would, please.
All right. Would you please tell the court what you would like for the court to know?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Your Honor, for the privilege of speaking on behalf of my friend Sarah Boone. I also want to extend my heartfelt condolences to everyone here affected by this terrible tragedy, which has brought us all here and listening in. Many articles.
Right. So you can tell that Lana Albert is very impressed by the high profile nature. Many people are listening in to me, Lana Albert, and many articles have been written about this case, but it's a terrible tragedy. And somehow she wants to apologize for the tragedy. She's so sorry that everybody has to be here. That's for Sarah Boone to do, not her.
Videos and opinions of Sarah have gone out in the airways and on the webs. Opinions that have been formed and commented on so much that it's hard not to give into the temptation to treat people like a comic book or a fictional character. In the case of my friend Sarah, the words narcissist, Karen, villain, many other things, they roll off the tongue with little regard to the humanity that is dismissed so flippantly. And under a lot of circumstances, I was one of those people, as I have a love of true crime. And becoming friends with Sarah has shown me that there's a lot more depth to the people I see on the screen. I'd like to share with the world and with the court about the Sarah Boone that I know. Sarah.
They're just as horrible and as dangerous, but in a much more complicated and deep way, guys. I mean, she's not a comic book, but she is really famous. Guys, I talked to someone who's really famous.
Sarah Boone is a kind, honest, and good person. The Sarah Boone I know is one who loves animals, especially the kind who are damaged and defenseless.
No, Larry P., this is a woman speaking, Lana Albert. She's got a deep voice, though, yeah. But she knows her so well over 11 months of pen pals and maybe some phone calls in jail. So isn't that the best way to get to know someone?
How many of us would take in and pour love for a hearing impaired and a sight impaired pair of dogs? She has a natural instinct to help reach out and give of herself. Her time and energy and love, especially to those who are hurting or damaged. You all have seen her fight for her own life and truth here I tell you this, she fights even harder for those she loves, giving time, attention, and companionship without a single thought for her own gain or what somebody can do for her. And one huge example is in the matter of our friendship. As I said before, I have end-stage renal disease caused by a genetic illness.
Kudos to, I think George's mother says it best here. This is how we all felt listening to this. Just no thanks. Hand over the eyes. Cringy. Cringy, cringy. She'll talk soon about how Sarah Boone offered her kidney. But you can offer anyone anything, right? It's the actual doing of it. Something you used to talk about. There's a French phrase called, what is it called? Invitation to Gaston, which is like meaning like come to my summer home, but you don't really mean it. This is like an invitation to Gaston for her kidney. Like, how is she going to get it? This woman's in Minnesota. She knows she's probably going to be sentenced, and even if she's not, she doesn't have to go through with it. Something can come up. Trauma is just too deep. But the fact that she offered, this woman thinks is for maybe the sole purpose that if she didn't need, say, a character witness, this woman would come forward, because nobody who's really known Sarah a long time is coming forward. It's all people she met because of her own crime. People in jail, people who work at the jail, and this groupie. It's telling.
Called polycystic kidney disease. As my life has progressed, things I have taken for granted have been taken away from me. I could not appear in court in person because I can no longer walk, as my dialysis treatments have affected the circulation of my legs and has confined me to a wheelchair. To say that my life has radically changed is an understatement. Through it all, I have many friends and family I love and cherish. Sarah has distinguished herself differently in this way. In the course of getting to know her, I started sharing the progressing state of my health. It was like lightning had struck her. The moment Sarah had learned the depth of my struggles health-wise, she straight up offered strenuously to donate a kidney to me. I got to tell you this. I hope she's not mad for me showing this, but she had no hesitation, no concern over personal risk or personal gain. I want to convey to this, out and around the world, that is merely offering is a good and heroic act.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It takes nothing to offer someone something. A heroic act is going through with it. Fake offers don't mean anything. Who knows why she offered it to you? And these impulses, good impulses, are way different than good acts. But she keeps saying, I hope Sarah's not mad at me. I hope she's not mad at me. Almost as if she knows Sarah Boone has a temper and she can fly off the handle. Almost as if.
I've had many friends. I've not had one outside of my brother who has offered me a kidney. That is huge. I don't have anything of equal value to give to her. And that's not the actions of a narcissist. She did it as a reflex action, as a good person. After the verdict came in October, we spoke that night, and I hope Sarah doesn't get mad at me.
I hope Sarah doesn't get mad at me again. Becky Ireland says Sarah can offer her a kidney because she knows she can't donate. Alcoholics are not able to donate. Didn't know that. End of discussion. Just another manipulation. Agreed.
Again for disclosing this, but out of all the shock and seriousness of what had happened in the court, the thing that made her emotionally break was that she realized she could no longer be a donor to me. I mean, I was sitting there like, hey, it's going to be okay. But she was so broken up, she couldn't help me. that's a friend. She is not, nor does she come up anywhere remotely close to being a narcissist. Now, one more thing before I go.
That's a really strong endorsement. She's not a narcissist. I mean, she's really not a narcissist. She's definitely not a narcissist, guys. That's not one of the things she is. I can't tell you any of her other good qualities because I don't really know her. But she did offer me her kidney and was upset, and it wasn't an act of manipulation. Definitely not, because she's not a narcissist, guys. And I hope she's not mad. I hope she's not mad. Not that she has a temper, because she definitely doesn't have a temper. This was not too helpful to Sarah Boone, but it will be remembered forever by me as one of the more absurd things in the sentencing hearing.
The media has worked to rip the blindfold off of Lady Justice, to take the sword out of her right hand and start assassinating Sarah's character. However, the scales are the balance. As it says in Psalm 85, mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Justice isn't justice without mercy. Our pursuit of righteousness isn't complete and right without peace. Thank you, Your Honor, for the honor of speaking for my friend Sarah Boone. I hope that your justice is mixed with mercy here today. Thank you.
Right. Those are all of Sarah Boone's silver friends. Do you guys know the phrase, make new friends, but keep the old? One is silver and the other gold. Those are all her silver friends. She's just met people, not her ex-husband. No one from her past life is going to speak, only her present jail life. And topped off by that groupie Lana Albert. Shame on her for asserting herself in a high-profile trial, although I'm sure she's thrilled about it, being a true crime aficionado. That's what I have for today, guys. Tomorrow I'll be back. Lots of interesting things going on in the Karen Reed case. May talk about that tomorrow, perhaps. 6 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. I'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.